Hi and welcome everyone to our 84th episode of The Little Inside. As usual, my name is still Tobi, and this week we're going to explore a little bit what it means to recognize awareness. So let's get started right after the intro. In some of the traditional Buddhist literature, the mind would be defined as that which is clear and knowing. Clear simply means that it is not obstructive, it doesn't have any form, it doesn't have any shape, it is immaterial, it is very much like space. Knowing here means the quality of the mind which recognizes phenomena. It is something that is aware. It is not just empty, dead space, but it is something that knows simultaneously. So that would be what the mind is, or you can more say it's the nature of the mind. This element of knowing, of awareness, is actually always there. We are always aware. There's always some degree of awareness. Now, this awareness at the very base of the mind, however, is overlooked. We do not see it. Very much like we do not see our own eyes. Our eyes go that way, so we see everything that appears to our eyes, but we do not see the eyes to which those things appear. So you can see colors, shapes, forms, trees, houses, people with your eyes. But as you see those things, usually what happens is the awareness gets lost in those things. It flows out to those things. It contemplates those things. It either flows out into thought, it flows out into sight or sound. It gets lost in smell or taste. So the awareness continuously kind of gets lost in what appears to it. So it's all about recognizing awareness this week. So what does it really mean to recognize awareness, and how do we do it? As you're listening to me right now while I'm talking, then you can be aware of what I'm talking about. You can contemplate what I'm talking about, or you can also become aware that you are actually listening right now, that there is this kind of listening quality inside of you. So this is when your awareness turns around. As my teacher often says, it's kind of like turning the light around. Like you have a flashlight. The flashlight is illuminating things that are before it. Now the ray of light turns around to illuminate the flashlight itself. So we become aware of this knowing quality, this knowing element. And let's not make this anything fancy, anything really, really profound or difficult. Just simply notice right now, as you're listening to me, that there is this listening quality inside of yourself. A good thing about listening to someone talk is that it usually empties our own mind of thought. So that's one of the reasons, I believe, why we like reading books or watching TV or getting lost in conversations, because every time you're listening to someone speak, or every time your mind gets lost in an activity, then your own mind kind of becomes quiet in that moment. If you're watching TV, for example, TV is probably one of the best examples. When you're watching TV, then you will notice that there's something pleasant about watching TV. Kind of puts you into a state, as Eckhart Tolle describes it pretty nicely actually, below thought. It puts your mind below thought, meaning it empties your mind, but you don't recognize that your mind is empty. You're just in that empty kind of listening state. Your mind is wide open. That's one of the problems probably when you're watching TV. You're very suggestible or suggestive? I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. Like your mind is wide open for suggestions. So if you're watching an advert in the TV, it kind of goes right into the subconscious mind and continues to play there. And that can only happen because your mind in that moment is kind of open. And so the same kind of thing happens as you're going to sleep, for example, or when listening to one of these talks, when you're watching YouTube, you're watching one of these talks, or Another example would be getting really lost in a piece of music. Your mind becomes really open in that moment, in that listening quality. It is emptied of thought. Now, if you can recognize that quality right now, as I'm talking, your mind is most likely empty of thoughts. You're not forming sentences or pictures or images, but you're just listening to what I say. Now, the magic of that is that as soon as you recognize yourself as the listener, that's when awareness turns around. We could call that introspection. So you're not your observing quality is not extroverted. It doesn't move to the outside, but it now moves back onto itself. There's one of my favorite sayings is definitely the one from Francis of Assisi. Was an old Christian saint, and he is quoted having said, what is it? Where you are looking, or what you are looking for is where you are looking from. So that points kind of to that. Like if you're listening right now, you can either get lost in the content of what I say, or you can start to recognize the listening quality in your own mind. That means you're beginning to recognize awareness. And that is just a beginning. It's a very humble beginning. We don't want to go all the way directly right from the start. This would be quite impossible, but we start in small, tiny steps. Now, where the whole thing becomes a bit more interesting even is as you're observing your own thoughts. Now, you're listening to me talk, but in the same way, you could actually listening to your own head talking. You can listen to your brain as it thinks, as it forms thoughts. And as you're listening to your mind going on, talking about this and talking about that, then at the same time, can you notice that there is an aware quality, that there is something that is currently listening to your mind? So that would be kind of the first step, to recognize that there is something that's aware of thinking. That already means that you're not the thinker anymore. Very often I ask people, well, who is thinking? They would say, what would you say? Me, I'm thinking, right? I'm the one that thinks. Then I would lead them through an exercise where I show them how to listen to their thoughts. We can do that. In fact, we can do it right now. We have a little bit of time. So right now, just if you want, you can close your eyes. And as you close your eyes, I'll close my eyes as well. And just let's rest there for a minute, just allowing your mind to have any kind of thought it wants to have. Just noticing what kind of thoughts arise in your mind and what kind of thoughts pass. And here we can just focus on the verbal thoughts, just the words that come up in your head. So please let your mind completely free. Let it say whatever it wants to say. Now begin to notice that you're actually listening to your thoughts. So how can you be the thinker when you are here as a listener right now? Just keep observing how the thoughts arise and pass. There's something very automatic to them. They just arise and pass all by themselves. So if you like, you can open your eyes again. It's a very simple, very basic exercise. Just kind of showing you that there is some space between the talking that goes on in your head and the one who is listening to this talk. Now, upon first recognition of that space in between, then you will notice that there is kind of a gap, or this space, and that can give you a greater possibility or chance to actually recognize fully that there is an awareness there. Like in the beginning, the tendency of our mind would be to be completely lost in the content. So yes, we are the thinker most of the time. We completely confuse ourselves with the content in our heads. So that's in the beginning stages very much, excuse me, very much the problem. We get lost in the content of our head. And this gives us this little exercise, gives us this wonderful chance to actually discover ourselves a layer above thought. You can actually become the watcher of thoughts. In a similar way, you can become the watcher of emotions. You can allow your emotions to dance and then recognize yourself as the knowing quality rather than what is known. In order to do this exercise properly, though, you should have some degree of stability in your mind. And that's precisely why we do some breathing meditation, why we practice informal sessions. We're kind of empowering the mind so it becomes quiet enough to see clearly that there is space in between what can be observed and the observer itself. So this is pretty much all that comes to mind for this little exercise. I always like these kind of little glimpses, little experiments that we can do. It's nothing profound or amazingly deep or philosophical or in any way complete or whatever. It's just a little invitation to do these experiments and to kind of get to know that there are different layers to your mind, different layers to experiencing things in reality. So I hope that it is helpful. Let me know in the comment sections if you do have any questions, or just let me know how it felt for you. I'm always happy to read your comments. And for now, I think it's good enough. And I'm wishing all of you a wonderful next week and look forward to see you all again next Wednesday. Bye-bye.